Hi, the topic for this video is osmolality. And if your question is why this topic, it is because I often encounter questions related to osmolality. The most frequently asked question is, what is the reason behind the three components involved in the formula for calculating serum osmolality? To put it in simpler terms, they often ask me, why 2 into sodium, right? Why glucose by 18? Why blood urea nitrogen by 2.8? And the next commonly asked question is, okay, if you have such a beautiful formula to calculate serum osmolality, then why are we dependent on a sophisticated instrument by name osmometer to measure osmolality directly? So what is the difference between the calculated osmolality and this measured osmolality? What is osmolar gap? What is the clinical significance of recalculating osmolar gap? Now, to answer all these questions once for all, I thought I should record this video. And for those of you who are visiting my YouTube channel for the first time, this is Dr. Shanmuga Priya, Professor and Head of the Department of Biochemistry at Government Thoothukudi Medical College. I've also released an app for biochemistry in the name Basics to Clinics. And this app is tailor-made to meet the demands of all medical students, be it a first-year MBBS student who is appearing for his or her university exam, or a medical graduate who's preparing for NEET PG entrance. It can also be a medical student who's getting ready for his or her next exam. It is going to be equally useful. It is because I give you this assurance because I have dealt with every topic from basics till clinics in the true sense, because I've started explaining every basic concepts. I've built on it so that you will be able to apply it for clinical practice. So that's about my app, and I've attached the link for app subscription in the description box below in case you need it. Now let's quickly get on to the topic for this video, which is osmolality. Please watch the video till the end, because at the end I've given you a practical example which will help you in understanding the calculation of all these values and in understanding the clinical implication of all these values. Okay, so let's begin with osmosis. So what is osmosis? Osmosis is basically a movement of solvent. Yeah, it's a movement of solvent from a solution with lower impermeable solute concentration to a solution with higher impermeable solute concentration across a semi-permeable membrane. Have a look at this picture. So in this picture, the red color membrane is the semi-permeable membrane, and it separates two solutions. And as you can see here, one of the two solutions has got more number of impermeable solutes. So if this solution has got less number of impermeable solute, it means the effective solvent concentration here is more. So solvent starts moving from the solution of lower impermeable solute concentration to a solution of higher impermeable solute concentration, rising the level of fluid on the side with higher impermeable solute concentration. This is osmosis. Now, what is osmotic pressure? Osmotic pressure is the pressure that has to be exerted along the side of higher impermeable solute concentration to prevent osmotic movements. Do you understand this? Osmotic pressure is the pressure that has to be exerted along the side of higher impermeable solute concentration to prevent osmotic movements. And this osmotic pressure P is given by nRT by V. I hope you all know universal gas equation, right? Universal gas equation is PV is equal to nRT. So P is equal to nRT by V. And here I want you to observe that osmotic pressure P is directly proportional to N, the number of osmotically active solutes present in a solution. Do you understand this? Osmotic pressure is directly proportional to the number of osmotically active solutes present in the solution, and that is why osmotic pressure is called as a colligative property. colligative property is a property which is dependent on the number of particles rather than on the nature of particles. Example of colligative property is osmotic pressure. Now, are you worried about such osmotic movements happening in human body? Yes. For example, in diabetic ketoacidosis. So in diabetic ketoacidosis, ketone bodies get added to the circulation. Imagine that this part represents the circulation, and into circulation what gets added? Ketone bodies get added, and these are impermeable solutes. So when in the circulation number of impermeable solute concentration increases, solvent would start moving first from the cell into the interstitial fluid, and then from the interstitial fluid it would get into the circulation. So on one hand it causes increase in volume load in the circulation, that causes osmotic diuresis, and on the other hand it causes intracellular dehydration. And this intracellular dehydration is the cause of coma in diabetic ketoacidosis. So that's one example of a clinical scenario where an osmotic movement causes pathological effects. Another example is ethylene glycol poisoning. Ethylene glycol, an antifreeze, being an alcohol, gets metabolized by alcohol dehydrogenase to form an aldehyde, and then an aldehyde dehydrogenase converts it into an acid. And the acid which you get from ethylene glycol is oxalic acid, and this oxalic acid gets added to the circulation. Now this causes osmotic movement. Again, water starts moving from the cell first into the interstitial fluid, and then from the interstitial fluid into the circulation. This causes again volume overload on one hand, which causes osmotic diuresis, and on the other hand it causes intracellular dehydration, which causes coma. So there are many clinical conditions where you are worried about such osmotic movements. And in all these conditions, if you want to assess the extent of intracellular dehydration that has happened, will you be able to get into every cell and assess the extent of dehydration? You can't. So to get an extent of extracellular dehydration that has happened in cell, you are indirectly going to measure it by measuring the osmotic pressure that has to be applied to prevent osmotic movements. Right? Again, can you measure osmotic pressure by connecting a manometer to every vessel and applying pressure to see how much pressure needs to be applied to prevent osmotic movements? No, that is also not possible. So to get an idea of the osmotic pressure, indirectly you are measuring the number of osmotically active particles present in the solution, and that is why you for a measurement of osmolarity and osmolality. So if you are asked why do we measure serum or plasma osmolarity or osmolality, your answer should be both osmolarity and osmolality are measurement of number of osmotically active particles present in a solution. And by measuring the number of osmotically active particles present in a solution, I will be able to judge the extent of osmotic movements that happen in a person. Now, what is the difference between osmolarity and osmolality? Osmolarity R is the number of osmotically active particles present per liter of the whole solution, whereas osmolality L is the number of osmotically active particles present per kilogram of the solvent alone. So there are two basic differences. One is osmolarity is per liter, which means it's a volume based measurement. Osmolality is per kilogram, which means it's a weight based measurement. So this is one reason behind why we say osmolality L is a better index. Because anything which is volume based will be affected by temperature changes. So osmolality measurement is not affected by temperature changes. So it's a better index when compared to osmolarity. This is one reason. Another reason is, as I told you, osmolality is per kilogram of the solvent alone, whereas osmolarity is per liter of the whole solution. When you take into consideration the whole solution, that measurement is going to be affected by the presence of other background solutes also. Do you understand this? So osmolarity is not only affected by temperature changes, it's also affected by the presence of background or permeable solutes. Please remember, osmotic movements are caused only by impermeable solutes. They are never caused by permeable solutes. But any solution will have both permeable and impermeable solutes. So if osmolarity is going to take into consideration the whole solution, that measurement unnecessarily gets affected by the presence of background or permeable solutes. So for these two reasons, which is a better index? Osmolality is a better index. But for all practical purposes, you can use the two terms interchangeably as long as it's going to be a measurement of something which is happening in your blood. You can use the two terms interchangeably, basically because we have an effective thermostat which maintains your body temperature in a narrow range. And in that narrow range, temperature variation is not going to affect osmolarity. Okay, and again, I said osmolarity is affected by the presence of background or permeable solutes. And if it's serum or plasma, the background or permeable solutes are going to be the same, right? So if it is serum or plasma, you can use the terms interchangeably. That's why even in Genong, in one chapter, you will find a statement, the normal serum osmolarity, the normal serum osmolarity is 285 to 295 milliosmoles per liter. The same Genong, the last chapter, renal physiology, they would have mentioned it as the normal serum osmolality is 285 to 295 milliosmoles per kilogram. So as far as serum or plasma is concerned, you can use both the terms interchangeably. But if you are asked which is a better index, your answer should be osmolality. Now, what is the formula? The formula for calculating osmolality is 2 into sodium plus glucose concentration by 18 plus blood urea nitrogen by 2.8. Now the important question is, why do we have these three components? Why 2 into sodium? Accepted that sodium is a major extracellular cation. We also know that sodium is an impermeable solute. So we know that we have to count the number of sodium present in the circulation to get an idea of osmotic movements. But why do we multiply it by 2? It's because sodium would not have been in your circulation as just Na+. It would have been there as sodium chloride or sodium bicarbonate, which would have dissociated to give sodium and the corresponding anions, Na+, Cl-, Na+, bicarbonate minus. So instead of measuring cation separately and anion separately, it's more wise if you measure the major extracellular cation and if you multiply it by 2, because that way you're including the effects of both cations and anions. That is why it is 2 into sodium, to include the effect of corresponding anions. Now, why is it glucose by 18? It is because in India, we measure glucose concentration in milligram per deciliter, which means we weigh the amount of glucose that is present in the blood. We don't count the number of glucose that is present in the blood. But as far as osmotic movements are concerned, we are worried only about the number. So how do you convert this weight into number? Using molecular weight. And we know molecular weight of glucose is 180 gram, which means 180 gram of glucose is 1 mole of glucose. So if it is 180 milligram of glucose, it has to be 1 millimole of glucose. So for the given X milligram per deciliter of glucose that is present in the circulation, how many millimoles can you expect? It's a simple mathematical formula, right? If it is 180 milligram, you know it is 1 millimole. So for the given X milligram per deciliter, how many millimoles will you have? It is X by 180 millimoles per deciliter. milligram per deciliter gets converted to millimole per deciliter. But you know that the final value of osmolarity has to be expressed as millimoles per liter. Now you have it as millimole per deciliter, but you want it as millimole per liter. And you know deciliter is 100 ml, liter is 1000 ml. So for 100 ml, if it's x by 180, for 1000 ml it would be x by 180 into 10. So it becomes x by 18 millimoles per liter. That is why you measure the concentration of glucose and you divide it by 18 and use it as the second component of the formula. Now, why is it blood urea nitrogen by 2.8? It's for the same reason. What do you mean by blood urea nitrogen? It is nitrogen which is present in the form of urea. And what is the formula for urea? Formula for urea is C double bond O in the center, that is attached to 2NH2. So how many nitrogen do you find here? 2 nitrogen. 1 nitrogen weighs 14 grams, 2 nitrogen would weigh 28 grams. So the same story, 28 gram of blood urea nitrogen is 1 mole of blood urea nitrogen. 28 milligram of blood urea nitrogen would be 1 millimole of blood urea nitrogen. For the given x milligram per deciliter of blood urea nitrogen, how many millimoles do you expect? If it is 28 milligram, it is 1 millimole. For x milligram per deciliter, it is x by 28 millimoles per deciliter. And to convert it into millimole per liter, you have to multiply it by 10. So x by 28 into 10 millimoles per liter. So it becomes x by 2.8 millimole per liter. That is the reason for the third component. So what is the formula for calculating osmolarity of serum or plasma? It is 2 into sodium plus glucose concentration by 18 plus blood urea nitrogen by 2.8. And please remember, you're going to use this formula only until glucose concentration and blood urea nitrogen concentration are expressed in milligram per deciliter. You know, in all Western countries, glucose concentration and blood urea nitrogen would be expressed as millimoles. In which case, do not again divide it by 18, do not again divide it by 2.8. In that case, you just add all three components. Just measure sodium, which will be expressed as milliequivalents per liter multiplied by 2. Check the glucose concentration, which is expressed in millimoles, add. Check the blood urea nitrogen concentration, which is expressed in millimoles, add it. And that will give you the formula, that will give you the final calculated serum osmolality. Okay. And I have also come across questions like, okay, if it's blood urea nitrogen, I have to divide it by 2.8. What if I'm given urea concentration? These days, I know all biochemical reports have BUN values, blood urea nitrogen values. But some labs still express it as only urea value. So what if I get urea value? How do I calculate osmolarity? If it's urea, you have to divide it by 6. If urea concentration is given, you please divide it by 6 instead of dividing blood urea nitrogen by 2.8. Reason is molecular weight of urea is 60 grams, 60. So when you divide it by 60 and multiply it by 10, it becomes by 6. So the formula is either blood urea nitrogen by 2.8 or urea by 6. That's about calculating osmolality. Now, what is the limitation of calculating osmolality, because of which we have started utilizing a sophisticated equipment called as osmometer? The limitation is, this formula is based on the assumption that only sodium, the corresponding anions, glucose and blood urea nitrogen are osmotically active, which is true under physiological conditions. What happens in pathological conditions? Say diabetic ketoacidosis. In diabetic ketoacidosis, you know, ketone bodies get added to circulation, and these ketone bodies would have caused osmotic movements, but you're going to miss those osmotic movements because the formula for calculating osmolality does not have a provision to include the concentration of ketone bodies, because the formula is very simple: 2 into sodium plus glucose by 18 plus blood urea nitrogen by 2.8. There is no provision to include ketone body concentration. Similarly, in ethylene glycol poisoning, oxalic acid would have got added to the circulation. That would have caused osmotic movements, and those osmotic movements you would have missed because the formula does not include a provision or does not provide a provision for including the concentration of oxalic acid. So in short, the limitation of calculating osmolality is that calculated osmolality includes the effects of only normal solutes. It includes the effects of only normal solutes. It does not include the effect of abnormal solutes. So many a time it will be an underestimation of osmotic movements. And that is why we have started measuring osmolality directly. And for measuring osmolality, we use an instrument called as osmometer. And this osmometer is based on freezing point depression, because freezing point depression, similar to osmotic pressure, is a colligative property. Yeah, why have we discovered an instrument by name osmometer which works based on freezing point depression? Because freezing point depression, like osmotic pressure, is a colligative property. When we initiated this discussion, I said colligative property is something which is dependent on the number of particles rather than on the nature of particles. I'll explain this to you. Suppose I give you 100% pure water. Yeah, I give you 100% pure water. You keep it in a freezer. You allow it to freeze. At what temperature would it freeze? As expected, it freezes at 0 degree. Okay. You take that 100% pure water. You add 1 osmole of any solution. When I say 1 osmole, I mean to say it is 1000 milliosmole of any solution is added per liter of that water. So the resultant solution would be 1 osmole solution, and that freezes at minus 1.86. Irrespective of whether you add 1 osmole of sodium or 1 osmole of chloride or 1 osmole of a combination of sodium and chloride, that 1 osmole solution would always freeze at minus 1.86. Now you add 1 more osmole to the same solution, which means the resultant solution's osmolarity is 2000 milliosmoles per liter. And that solution freezes at 2 into minus 1.86. Add 1 more osmole, that freezes at 3 into minus 1.86. So what does this mean? If the freezing point is depressed by 1.86, yeah, from 0 it's depressed to minus 1.86. So if the freezing point depression of a solution is 1.86, osmolarity of the solution is 1000 milliosmoles per liter. Okay, now you take the plasma for which you want to know the osmolarity. You allow it to freeze. Observe the temperature at which it freezes. So you know the freezing point depression of your plasma or the patient's plasma. So for the given freezing point depression, what is the osmolarity? This is the basis in which osmometers work. So though osmometer, the term sounds sophisticated, all that the osmometer does is it receives a serum of plasma whose osmolarity or osmolality we are trying to measure. It allows the serum or plasma to freeze. It observes the temperature at which it freezes. And already we all know if the freezing point depression is 1.86, osmolarity is 1000 milliosmoles per liter. So for the given freezing point depression of plasma, what is the osmolarity? And it is calculated as 1000 by 1.86 into freezing point depression of plasma. And usually our plasma, yeah, normal person's plasma freezes at minus 0.54. Normal plasma freezes at minus 0.54. So the formula would be 1000 by 1.86 into 0.54. If you calculate, you will get it as 290 milliosmoles per liter. That is why we say normal serum or plasma osmolarity is 285 to 295 milliosmoles per liter. So this is about measuring osmolality. So now we have two numbers. What are the So we have two numbers now, right? One is a calculated osmolality and the other one is measured osmolality. And the basic difference is calculated osmolality includes the effects of just normal solutes. Right? Calculated osmolality includes effects of only normal solutes. Whereas measured osmolality includes the effects of both normal and abnormal solutes. Now, what is osmolar gap? Osmolar gap is a difference between measured osmolality and calculated osmolality. So what is this number? What does this number depict? As I told you, measured is the sum of normal and abnormal. Calculated is just normal. So if you make a difference, osmolar gap is a measure of abnormal solutes. Do you understand this? Osmolar gap is a measure of abnormal solutes. So if you are asked what are the clinical conditions wherein osmolar gap is elevated, your answer should be in any clinical condition wherein there is an increase in the abnormal exogenous or endogenous solutes, osmolar gap will be elevated. An example for abnormal exogenous solute. Yeah, example for abnormal exogenous solute would be ethylene glycol metabolite, which is oxalic acid. An example for abnormal endogenous solute would be ketone bodies. So in these conditions, osmolar gap will be elevated. So that's all about all these terms which you need to know. Normal osmolar gap is 10. So when will you call it as increased osmolar gap? When it's more than 10, you call it as increased osmolar gap. And if it's increased osmolar gap, you will have to find out which abnormal solute has accumulated. It's going to be either an abnormal exogenous or an endogenous solute. Now, let's quickly go through this sample calculation. This will help you in understanding what we have discussed so far clearly. A person with a known history of ethylene glycol poisoning was found to have an osmolality of 310 milliosmoles per liter. They've given you a value which is 310 milliosmoles per liter, which means measured osmolality is 310 milliosmoles per liter. Serum values were sodium 135 milliequivalents per liter, potassium 4.5 milliequivalent per liter, glucose 180 milligram per deciliter, blood urea nitrogen was 28 milligram per deciliter. Calculate the osmolar gap. So to calculate osmolar gap, you need to know the measured osmolality and the calculated osmolality. So what is the formula for calculated osmolality? It is 2 into sodium plus glucose concentration by 18 plus blood urea nitrogen by 2.8. So 2 into sodium would be 2 into 135 plus glucose by 18 would be 180 by 18 plus blood urea nitrogen is 28 by 2.8. So answer is 270 plus 10 plus 10. So it is 290. Calculated value is 290. Measured value is 310. Osmolar gap is measured minus calculated. So it is 310 minus 290, which is 20 milliosmoles per liter. And as I said, normal osmolar gap is 10, which is elevated here. So it's a case of increased osmolar gap. And why is it a case of increased osmolar gap? It is because it's a case of ethylene glycol poisoning, wherein a metabolite of ethylene glycol, which is oxalic acid, would have accumulated in the circulation, causing osmotic movements. So that's all about all the terms which I wanted to explain you. If you like this video, like and share. Thank you.